You might not be lazy. You might just be extremely good at avoiding discomfort. Because sometimes your brain would rather give you an hour of easy stimulation than 5 minutes of something emotionally difficult. And the strange part is, you may not even realize you're doing it. You wake up knowing there's something important you need to do. Maybe it's studying. Maybe it's working on your career. Maybe it's exercising. Maybe it's finally starting the project you've been thinking about for months. You know it matters. You know you'll feel better once it's done. And yet, you reach for your phone. You check one notification, then another. You watch a video, then another. And suddenly, an hour has disappeared. So you call yourself lazy. But what if that explanation is wrong? What if you aren't avoiding the task itself? What if you're avoiding the feeling you expect the task to create? Think about what happens when you sit down to do something difficult. Before you even begin, your mind may already be predicting boredom, frustration, uncertainty, failure. Maybe you don't know exactly how to start. Maybe you want to do it perfectly. Maybe you're afraid that after putting in all that effort, the results still won't be good enough. So the task isn't just a task anymore. Your brain has attached an emotional cost to it. And now you have another option, your phone. Scrolling doesn't require much uncertainty. It doesn't ask you to perform. It doesn't make you confront the possibility of failure. It gives you stimulation immediately. And that's an important distinction. The problem isn't simply that your brain likes easy things. It's that immediate rewards can feel disproportionately compelling when the alternative requires you to tolerate discomfort now for a reward later. Working on your future might benefit you 6 months from now. Scrolling can make you feel stimulated in the next 3 seconds, and your brain is sitting in the present. That's why the choice can feel strangely difficult. You aren't comparing two equal rewards. You're comparing a delayed payoff with an immediate one. But there's something even more interesting happening. When you avoid the difficult task, something happens inside you. The discomfort disappears. For a moment, you feel relief. You were anxious about starting the project. You opened your phone. Now you don't have to think about the project. That relief is powerful, and your brain can learn from it. The pattern becomes task, discomfort, avoidance, relief. And because avoidance produced relief, the brain has just learned something. Avoiding this worked. The task is still there. Nothing has actually been solved, but the uncomfortable feeling is gone. So next time you face something similar, avoidance becomes slightly easier. And eventually, you may start calling the pattern laziness. But notice what happened. You didn't simply refuse to work. You learned to escape discomfort. And the more often you escape it, the more automatic that escape can become. This is why simply telling yourself to work harder often doesn't solve the problem. You're trying to defeat a pattern with willpower, when the pattern is being reinforced every time avoidance gives you relief. So what actually changes it? Not some massive transformation. You interrupt the pattern. Instead of telling yourself, I need to finish this entire project, give your brain a smaller demand. I'm just going to work on it for 5 minutes. The goal isn't to trick yourself into becoming productive. It's to reduce the psychological barrier to beginning. Because sometimes the anticipation of starting feels harder than the first few minutes of the task itself. Once you've started, the uncertainty changes. The task becomes concrete. You aren't imagining the work anymore. You're actually doing it. And that matters. But there's another problem. Your environment may be constantly training you in the opposite direction. If your phone is beside you while you're working, you're not simply fighting distraction. You're repeatedly being presented with an easier alternative. And every time you choose it, you strengthen that behavioral pathway. This is why changing your environment can be more effective than constantly trying to become more disciplined. Put the phone somewhere inconvenient. Remove unnecessary notifications. Make the behavior you want easier to begin. And make the behavior you're trying to reduce slightly harder to access. You're not changing your personality. You're changing the choices surrounding your behavior. And there's one final piece that may be even more important. Stop saying, I'm lazy. Because lazy sounds like a personality. It turns a behavior into an identity. Instead of, I'm lazy, try, I've been avoiding difficult things. That's a completely different statement. The first one sounds permanent. The second one describes a pattern, and patterns can change. If you spend years telling yourself that you're lazy, every unproductive day can become evidence. You procrastinated again? See, I'm lazy. You didn't finish what you planned? That's just who I am. And eventually, the label itself becomes part of the problem. Not because your brain magically believes every word you say, but because the way you describe yourself influences what you expect from yourself. So maybe the question isn't, how do I stop being lazy? Maybe the better question is, What feeling am I trying to avoid right now? Is it boredom? Uncertainty? Fear of failure? Overwhelm? Perfectionism? Or simply the discomfort of beginning? Because once you can identify the feeling, you can stop treating yourself like the problem. You can start looking at the pattern. And that changes everything. You don't need to become someone who never procrastinates. You don't need to wake up tomorrow with unlimited motivation. You simply need to notice the moment when discomfort appears and recognize what usually happens next. The urge to check your phone, the urge to postpone, the urge to tell yourself you'll do it tomorrow. That moment is the pattern. And that moment is also where you can interrupt it. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I'm just lazy, pause for a second. Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you've simply become very practiced at escaping discomfort. And if that's true, then the goal isn't to become a completely different person. It's to stop rehearsing the same pattern. Because the moment you stop automatically escaping every uncomfortable feeling, you may discover something surprising. You are capable of much more than you thought. You were just spending too much energy trying not to feel uncomfortable.